Shalom. Before I get started, I'm going to praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bashem, Yahawahshi, Bashem Rakakadash. This the brother of Bakalau Wallam. Here with another hopeful, edifying lesson to the elect body of Yahweh Bashem, Yahawahshi. The title of this lesson is going to be centered around, or something along the lines of, the Europeans are the children of the Greeks and the Romans, which are the Edomites, right? Because in the Bible, there's no such nation of people called Europeans in the Bible, right? So we're gonna just see if that's so. Put Europe. So Europe and Europeans are not in the Bible. So who are these people, right? The self-proclaimed white race, right? They are the nation of Edom, and they're going around the earth trying to disguise themselves. That's why they go by all these so many titles. And I was inspired to do this. Dude's medical doctor. I can't forget the guy. I can't think of the guy's name, but that's what he was. That's what he stated. He was an Edomite, and he was a medical doctor, and he was saying those exact words. Said the Europeans are the children of the Edomites, right? Give me a second. Let's see. Right. It was inspired by this medical doctor, psychiatrist named Charles Socarides, right? Charles W. Socarides, if I'm saying his last name correctly, which it says he stated this, right? He says Charles Socarides was an American psychiatrist known for his views on homosexuality and his opposition to the these people rights movement, right? He was in opposition of it. It says the statement about Europeans being the children of the Greeks and Romans reflect a historical perspective on the cultural and intellectual heritage of Europe, which has roots in ancient Greek and Roman civilization, right? So we understand that we know that that's where Esau did these these so-called white people, self-proclaimed white people, which is the nation of Edom, are which they call themselves today Europeans or white. They are the descendants of the Romans, the Greeks and the Romans, which are the Edomites, right? That's what inspired me from um, Dr. Charles Socarides, right? He's a psychiatrist, right? So I'm gonna read a little bit of this because that's what I looked up. It says Europeans are the children of the Greeks and the Romans. That's what I looked up, right? Right, and it says many Europeans can trace cultural and historical roots back to the ancient Greeks and Romans, as their civilization significantly influenced European culture, language, and governance. Right, they con- this connection is evident in various aspects of modern European life, including art, architecture, and philosophy. It says ancestry of Europeans. It says Greek influence. It says Greeks settled in southern Italy and Sicily from the 8th century BC. It says their culture influenced local tribes, introducing the alphabet, weights, measures, and architectural styles. Greek Greek cities like Ephesus, Athens, Ephesus and Athens thrived under Roman rule, contributing to a shared cultural heritage. Roman heritage. It says the Roman Empire expanded significantly, incorporating various cultures, including the Greeks. Rome, Rome cultural, Rome culture was heavily influenced by Greek civilization, leading to a blend known as Greco-Roman culture. It says Romans adopted many Greek customs despite some anti-Greek sentiments among certain Roman elites. It says shared ancestry. It says many Europeans can trace their ancestry back to both Greek and Roman roots, right? So that's the point. Which all these Edomites, that's where their lineage come from, ancestry come from the Greeks and the Romans, which are the Edomites, right? It says the intermingling of these cultures laid the foundation of modern European identity. It says historical narratives often highlight connections to ancient figures, reinforcing the idea of a shared heritage. This blend of Greek and Roman ancestry is a significant part of European history, shaping cultural, political, and social developments throughout the continent. Just like you said, like these figures, you can look at the statues that can be seen to the even up until now. The carvings of statues, they look like so-called white people, man. But there'd be a denial and more or less a denial of ancestry because they don't want to, you know, uh, they don't want to own up to who they really are, basically. And this is from the Britannica.com, right? It says Greeks, Romans, and the barbarians in history in Europe, right? So what I'm saying, I'm gonna just skip around because this article or whatever is more or less a lengthy one. So I'm gonna just skip around for the most part because I don't want this video to be too long of a video. It says the main treatment of classical Greek and Roman history is given in the articles of uh, Ag, Ag, Agate, Aegean civilization, the Aegean civilization, ancient Greek civilization, Hellenistic age, ancient um, Italic people, and ancient Rome. Only a brief cultural overview is offered here, outlining the influence of Greeks and Romans on European history, right? The influence, because they are the same people. So I'm going to skip around, more or less get to the point. It says the Hellenists benefited greatly from the knowledge and achievement of other countries as regards astronomy, um, astronomy, chronology, chronology, and mathematics. Right. So who are the Hellenists? I already got this right there. Just to let you know who they are. They are the Greeks. It says the Hellenes. The Hellenes are the people. The Greeks call themselves. deriving from the mythological ancestor Helen, son of Du- Deucalion, and encompassing the various ancient Greek tribes like the Corians, Ionians, Aeolians, and Archaeans, right? So this is Hellenes, what they call themselves, right? The Hellenes or the Hellen, different from the Hellenistic, which that's what when people was other countries, other nations of people adopted or lived by the lifestyles of the Greek, meaning the so-called, you know, or so like the Jews at the time, right? There was the Hellenistic Jews that was forced into Greek culture, right? So the Hellenes are the Greeks. So you understand what we're talking about right here, right? So the Hellenes benefited greatly from the knowledge and achievement of other countries as regards astronomy, chronology, chronology, and mathematics. It said it was through their own native abilities that they made their great achievements in becoming the founders of European philosophy and science. Their achievement in representative art and architecture was no less fundamental. Their striving for an ideal, neuralistic rendering found its fulfillment in the representation of the human body in sculpture, in sculpture in the round, right? The representation of the human body in sculpture in the round. Another considerable achievement was the development of the pillared temple to a greater degree of harmony. In poetry, the genius of Hellenes created both forms and content which have remained a constant source of inspiration in European literature. Right? It says the strong political sense of the Greeks produced a variety of systems of government from which their theology of political science abstracted types of constitution that are still in use, right? So they form a government, but pertaining to the Greeks, which the Romans adopted, um, Greek, Greeks, the Greek style also, right, was heavily influenced. We just read that right here, right? The Roman Empire expanded significantly, incorporating various cultures, including the Greeks. Roman culture was heavily influenced by Greek civilization, right? Leading to the blend known as Greco-Roman culture. So, so they, the Romans also, when they conquered Greece, or the Greeks, right, which are the Macedonians, they adopted what they was, you know, everything about the Greeks, gods that they worship, their governments, architecture, everything, because more or less they were the same people. It says the strong political sense of the Greeks produced a variety of a system of government from which their theology or political science abstracted types of constitution that are still in use. On the whole, political development in Greece followed a pattern. First, the rule of kings, found as early as the period of Mycenaeans, as the Mycenaean civilization, then a federal period of oligarchy, noble landowners, and finally, variety of degrees of democracy, right? Variety degrees of democracy. Frequently, there were periods when individuals seized power in the cities and ruled as tyrants, right? So you see that right now with your current commander in chief. Frequently, there were periods when individuals seized power in the cities and ruled as tyrants. The tendencies for ever wider sections of the community to participate in the life of the state brought into being the free democratic citizens. But the institution of slavery, upon which Greek society and Greek economy rested, was untouched by this, right? So there was what? The institution of slavery. So there was heavily, they, there was, slavery was a big influence in their lifestyle. I'm gonna read that part again. It says the tendency for ever wider sections of the community to participate in the life of the state into being a brought into being the free democratic citizens, right? But the institution of slavery, upon which Greek society and Greek economy rested, was untouched by this, right? So they brought in democracy, but slavery still existed, and it wasn't changed. Now we're gonna prove this in the Bible. This is the Apocrypha, even to slavery, which they entreated the Jews heavily like that, when it came to slavery, which I'm gonna skip around on this in this chapter from the book of Maccabees, which is in the Apocrypha, the first book of Maccabees, chapter 8, verse 1. It says, now Judas had heard of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovely accept it, and such as would lovely accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them. So we were talking about the Greeks, and Judas Maccabees is a Jew, right? So I'm gonna jump down. So that's why I read the first verse, so we know what we're talking about. We talking about Judas heard of the fame of the Romans, basically, right? Jumping down to verse 5, it says, beside this, how they had discomfort in battle, Philip and Perseus, the king of Chittim, right? Which these are Greeks. Philip the Macedonian, right? Besides this, how they had discomfort in battle, Philip and Perseus, king of Sittim, which others had lifted up themselves against them and had overcome them. How also Antiochus, the great king of Asia, that came against them in battle, having 125 elephants with horsemen and chariots and a very great army, was discomforted by them, right? These Romans. And how they took them alive and covenanted and covenant that he had, and covenant that he and such as reigned after him should pay a great tribute and give hostages, and that which was agreed upon in the country of India and the Media and Lydia, and of a goodliest country, and of the goodliest countries which they took of him, and gave to King Eumenes. Eumenes. Moreover, how the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them. Right, the Greeks, they 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 were deciding to destroy the Romans. Right. Moreover, how the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them, and that they, having knowledge of, having knowledge thereof, sent against them a certain captain, and fighting with them, slew many of them, and carried away captive their wives and their children, and spoiled them, and took possession of their lands, and pulled down their strongholds, and brought them to be their servants unto this day, right? And it was told him besides how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them, right? But with their friends and such as relied upon them, they kept enmity, and that they had conquered kingdoms both far and nigh, insomuch as all that heard of their name were afraid of them. Also, that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom again they displaced, right? So whom they help to a kingdom reign. So whoever they help to be a kingdom, that kingdom reign, and whom against they would, so that whoever they came against, they displaced them. They took them out. Finally, that they were greatly finally that they were greatly exalted. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown or were clothed in purple to be magnified thereby. It says, moreover, how they had made for themselves a senate house wherein 320 men sat in council, daily consulting away the people, consulting away for the people, to the end they might be well ordered, and that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there were neither envy nor emu, emu, emulation among them. So what that sound like? The House and Senate and your president today. That's why it says Europeans, the Greek and Roman was heavily influenced by the Europeans. I mean, the Greek, yeah, the Greek and Roman culture was heavily influenced by the Europeans, because they are the same people. Even to democracy, what you see going on today, you got a president, you got two forms of government, a Senate and a House. That's why it says they have formed themselves. Verse 15, it says, moreover, how they have made for themselves a Senate house, right? Wherein 320 men sat in council, right? That's your House and Senate today. A Senate House, the House of Representatives and the Senate, they come together, your two forms of government. And then you got verse 16, that they committed their government to one man. That's your president every year, right? Who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. In considering all this, Judas chose Eupolemus, the son of John, the son of Achos, and Jason, the son of Eleazar, and sent them to Rome to make a league of enmity and confederacy with them, and to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them, for they saw that the kingdom of the Grecians did oppress Israel with servitude, right? So we just read that right here. But the institution of slavery, even though they created this form of free democratic citizens, right? But the institution of slavery didn't was but was not touched, right? Didn't change, right? Even though they was having this free democratic citizens within the the Roman the Greek empire. You had freedoms and rights, just democratic citizenship, being a democratic citizen, right? Same thing as today. The institution of slavery didn't change because it rests upon their society and economy, right? And you see there it says in Maccabees, the first Maccabees, that's how they treated the Jews, the children of Israel, right? It says the first Maccabees 18 again, it says, and to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them, right? For they saw that the kingdom of the Grecians did oppress Israel with servitude. They went therefore to Rome, which was a very great journey, and came into the Senate, where they spake and sat, right? So this was just giving some history that that these people still exist, these Europeans, which are the Greeks and the Romans. The reason why they adopted their the same customs, more or less, on mathematics, the government, architecture, and so forth and so on, is because they are the same people, right? That's why they got a heavily influenced. The Greek and the Roman culture is heavily influenced in European culture today, even to this day, because they are the same people, right? So I'm going to just read this, and that's going to be it, because it's going to more or less tell you the Macedonians and Greeks. It says, in spite of this continual internal disputes, the Greeks succeeded in warding off the threat of the Asian dys, dys, dystopian. What is that? How do you spell that? Depositism, the advance of the Persians into Europe fell 490 and 480 to 489 BC because of the resistance of the Greeks, and in particular the Athenians. The 5th century BC. The 5th century BC saw the highest development of Greek civilization. The classical period of Athens and its great accomplishments left a lasting impression, but the political cleavage, particularly to the struggle between Athens and Sparta, increasingly reduced the political strength of the Greeks. I named the Spartans. There was Jews, and they're in they are here too. Let me see if I can. I think I've seen it real quick. Let Lisa, hold on. Look up Senate. Let me see. Yeah, right here. He sent letters also to Lacedaemonians. They are the Spartans, and they are Jews. The Spartans were Jews, Israelites. You know, the Spartans was Israelites. Lacedaemonians, and to the other places of the same purposes, right? The Lacedaemonians are Spartans, which are Israelites, right? So the Spartans are talked about in the Bible too, right? They're the Lacedaemonians are the Spartans, which are Israelites, right? It says the 5th century BC saw the highest development of Greek civilization since the classical period of Athens, and its great accomplishments left a lasting impression. Oh, did I? Oh, it's like, okay. The advance of the Persians into Europe fell 490 and 480 to 479 BC because of the resistance of the Greeks. In particular, that's the conquest of Alexander the Great. They took over these so-called European lands. I mean, these areas were ruled by dark-skinned people. You know, there was Japhetic people before Alexander the Great. The Macedonian took over. You know, and then they through their world conquest and domination, colonialism. That's where it started from the Greeks, Alexander the Great, right? Because of the resistance of the Greeks, and in particular of the Athenians in the 5th century BC, saw the highest development of Greek civilization. Since the classical period of Athens and its great accomplishments left a lasting impression, but the political cleavage, particularly the struggle between Athens and Sparta, increasingly reduced the political strength of the Greeks. Not until they were conquered by the Macedonians, right, did the Greeks attain a new importance as the cultural leaven of the Hellenistic empires of Alexander the Great and his successors, right? So these Greeks, first, they was dark-skinned people until Alexander the Great took over, you know, which are Edomites, and they conquered these lands, and now they are called like the Greeks and the Romans, which the Romans were dark-skinned people too, Japhetic. Then Esau started calling themselves Greeks and Romans, but they was Macedonians. You know, they were the Macedonians when he saw Alexander the Great. Philip II, I think it's Philip II, his father, right? Hellenistic. It says not until they were conquered, not until they were conquered by the Macedonians did the Greeks attain a new importance as a cultural leaven of the Hellenistic empires of Alexander the Great and his successors, right? The four governors, right? Is it three? Might be mistaken on that. I gotta look. First Maccabees chapter 1. In the new system of colonization spread as far as the Indus city communities, fashioned after the Greek prototype, and the Greek education and language came to be the consequence in the world at large, right? So, due to Alexander the Great conquest, in consequence, Greek education and language became, what it is today. That's the consequences of Alexander the Great colonialism or conquest of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great and the Romans, right? So we go to First Maccabees chapter 1. See if I have it. Yeah, First Maccabees 1:1, and it said it happened after Alexander's son, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece, right? So Alexander the Great reigned over Greece, right? He was the first of the Macedonians to reign over Greece and had made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth and went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule, everyone in his place. All right. Let me see right quick. Right. It says everyone. Verse 7. I'm at verse 8, and his servants bear rule, everyone in his place. That's the four generals that after Alexander died, you know, mass, Europe, Egypt. I can't remember the names. You can look it up. The four generals of Alexander the Great, right? They took over sections, right? And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them, many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth, right? And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, Antiochus, the king, who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 130th and 7th year of the kingdom of the Greeks, right? So yeah, this is the history. That's why they took these books out, the Apocrypha, more or less to try to hide who they are. That's why they're going about today. They're going about these titles of white Europeans, even these Greeks and Romans, which they are not. They are the Edomites. But the Europeans, which is the so-called white race, the self-proclaimed white race, are the children of the Greeks and the Romans. So, I'm gonna end it off there. I hope it was edifying to the elect. I don't want to say call Halayimah Yahawah Ba'ashem Yahawahshi Ba'ashem Rakakadash Shalom to the next time Yahweh Ratazah, which means Lord willing, and Wah Abba Bo.